Hello, chemists. Let's talk about gases. Gases are very important to chemistry. They're often reactants in chemical reactions. They can be products in chemical reactions. Matter of fact, they are one of the states of matter. Of course, chemists are interested in the various forms of matter, those being gas, liquids, solids, or a plasma being an ionized gas. Gases take the volume and shape of the container the gas occupies. And gas particles translate. In other words, the center of mass of a gas particle, whether that particle be an atom or a molecule, it moves through space, just like a thrown baseball or a thrown football or a car or an airplane. And basically, these gas particles possess kinetic energy as they move through space. Gases also have weak intermolecular attraction between the particles. Now, these two bullet points go hand in hand. Even if there is attractive forces between gas particles, particles with enough kinetic energy as determined by their mass and velocity might not feel those attractive forces, much like a rocket with enough kinetic energy overcoming the attractive gravitational force of the Earth. To give you an idea of what I mean by particles translating, I put together a simulation here where I've got these black spheres that represent gas particles, whether they be atoms or molecules, really doesn't matter. But you can see that they are moving through space, and this cube here represents some sort of container. So as these gas particles strike the walls of the container, they rebound in possibly different directions. And it's a little bit hard to see from any given angle, but they do collide with each other. And as they collide, they rebound from each other. So these gas particles here have kinetic energy defined by their mass and the velocity or speed of those particles. Gases also have low densities. Density is measured as mass per unit volume. Low densities compared to liquids or even solids. As an example, liquid water, its density is close to 1 gram per milliliter, while air is significantly less than that. And this is ambient temperature and pressure, because temperature and pressure do have effects on density. And ambient being, we can think something close to room temperature. Bunch of elemental substances here. They're all gases at room temperature and pressure. Diatomic hydrogen, helium, diatomic nitrogen, diatomic oxygen, diatomic fluorine, neon, carbon dioxide, argon, radon, all gases at room temperature and pressure. Matter of fact, air is mostly composed of nitrogen, followed by oxygen, and then there's a little bit of argon and a little bit less CO2. Of course, depending on humidity, you can pick up some water as well. Temperature, volume, and pressure all determine the physical state of a gas. Matter of fact, in an upcoming video, we'll have an equation of state for a gas that actually links all three of these, so that if you were given the temperature and the volume of a gas, you could predict the pressure. So in other words, just having any two of these three variables allows you to predict the third. Pressure is a physical property. Pressure is defined as force exerted over some area A. So pressure, I'm going to give it the symbol P, force F, and area A. So its definition would be force per unit area, or force divided by area is our pressure. So let's see if we can work with this relationship here. So what exerts more pressure on a surface, a bowling ball or a baseball? Consider this cartoon here to represent what's going on. So here we've got a ball, a sphere, whether that be a bowling ball or a baseball, resting on a surface. I'm assuming no deformation here. So ideally, that sphere here would contact that surface at just a single point. Now, a point doesn't have any area, so I'm going to assume that there is some finite area of contact between a sphere and a surface. And I'm going to assume it's the same for a baseball or a bowling ball. Probably not the case if it's resting on the back of your hand, because your hand will start to deform. Now, a bowling ball has a greater gravitational force just because it has a larger mass. So if I look at this relationship here, the force is going to be larger for the bowling ball because it has more mass, has a greater attraction to the earth. I'm assuming that the area of contact between the bowling ball and the baseball on a surface are very similar. So I expect the pressure to be larger for that bowling ball, simply because it has a larger force. If you consider, let's say, a knife, and you're pressing down trying to cut a carrot, with the flat of the knife or the knife edge, Well, assuming you're applying equal force in both of those situations, I would expect the pressure to be larger for the knife edge, simply because that area of contact under the knife with the carrot is smaller when you're using the knife edge rather than the flat of the knife. So in this case, assuming the force exerted down as you press down on that carrot with a knife is the same in both of those situations, the only thing that is different is this, and the area is smaller with the knife edge. So a smaller denominator here means a larger pressure. Pressure comes in a variety of units. We've got atmospheres, we've got bar, we've got torr, millimeters of mercury. Yep, this is the atomic symbol for mercury. Centimeters of mercury. I suppose we could even have meters of mercury if we really wanted to. Inches of mercury, and then pascals. Matter of fact, a pascal is defined as a Newton per meter squared. Now, a Newton is a unit of force, and meter squared is a unit of area. So newtons per square meter is force per unit area. Matter of fact, that is our definition of pressure. This string of equalities can be treated as conversion factors. Now, for reference, atmospheric pressure is about 1 atmosphere. Of course, that will fluctuate with time. Let's take an example here, maybe use these conversion factors. Let's see if we can convert 5.11 atmospheres to centimeters of mercury. I'm going to start this calculation with 5.11 atmospheres, and I can look up here to find my conversion factor. Well, let's see, if I want centimeters of mercury, here's centimeters of mercury, and that is equal to 1 atmosphere. So my conversion factor, I'm going to write as 76 centimeters of mercury per 1 atmosphere. Atmosphere is in the denominator, so they cancel, and I'm only left with centimeters of mercury. Both of these numbers have 3 significant figures, so only 3 significant figures in my final answer. You might be wondering, where in the heck do some of these units come from? Where does millimeters of mercury or centimeters of mercury or inches of mercury come from? Well, in 1643, way back in the day, Torricelli really constructed the first barometer to measure atmospheric pressure or barometric pressure. And what he used was a mercury-filled dish, and in that dish he put a column that was open on one end down here and closed on the other, and he evacuated it of all the gases. So this did not contain any air within it. So what happened was, as you might expect, the atmospheric pressure, that 1 atmosphere, is pushing down on this dish of mercury, which is going to force mercury up into that column. And matter of fact, that column of mercury is going to exert its own pressure downwards. Now, what happens is that mercury is going to stop rising in the column when the atmospheric pressure is equal to the pressure from the column of mercury. What you can do here is actually measure this distance here in terms of millimeters or centimeters or inches of mercury. That's where we get this unit of pressure. So atmospheric pressure then becomes this height of this column of mercury for reference. Matter of fact, that height of the column of mercury was 76.0 centimeters of mercury with an atmospheric pressure of 1 atmosphere. So what is the origin of gas pressure? Well, pressure is exerted by a gas as gas particles, again atoms or molecules, as they collide with surfaces with a change in momentum. Momentum is defined as mass times velocity. And I know sometimes I use velocity interchangeably with speed, but velocity really implies direction. So if a gas particle collides with a surface, or maybe even with another gas particle, this direction of motion is going to change, so the velocity is going to change. That represents a change in momentum. That's where that pressure comes from. Now remember, gas particles translate. They move through space. Their centers of mass move through space, and they possess kinetic energy. Temperature really is an indirect measure of kinetic energy. What that means is, assuming the mass of the gas particles are not changing, a high temperature really means a larger velocity or a larger speed for those particles. A smaller temperature represents a smaller speed or smaller velocity for those particles, because again, mass and velocity are used to determine the kinetic energy. So in this case, if you increase the temperature, what you're doing is you're increasing the speed or velocity of the gas particles. You're going to increase the pressure. Well, why would that be? Well, the particles are going to collide with surfaces more frequently and with more force. You might be wondering, well, what surfaces am I talking about? Well, let's say you have a container where the gas is inside that container. If you warm that container up, those gas particles inside are be colliding with the inner surfaces of that container more frequently because they're moving faster, and they're going to hit with more force because they're moving faster. On the flip side, you decrease temperature, you're going to decrease the speed of the gas particles, you're going to decrease pressure because those particles in that container are going to collide with the surfaces less often because, again, they're moving more slowly, and they're just not going to strike as hard. Matter of fact, pressure, this idea of particles colliding with surfaces, that's the pressure that we feel on our bodies from the atmosphere as air particles collide with our bodies. And realize, all surfaces around us are experiencing the same pressure because gas particles in the air are colliding with the surfaces of the walls, desks, any objects in the room as well. Again, here's that simulation where we can take a look at the effects of changing temperature. An increased temperature means the particles are going to move faster. They're going to collide with the container walls, which is represented by this cube here, more frequently and with greater force. So an increase in temperature results in particles that will move faster. And as they move faster, again, more collisions with greater force. And by slowing those particles down, by lowering the temperature, the particles are moving significantly slower, maybe too slow. The particles are moving significantly slower, and you can see that they're just not going to hit the walls as frequently, and certainly not with the force that they had when they were traveling at higher velocities or higher speeds. Now, if you increase the volume, you're going to decrease the pressure, assuming the temperature is constant. We have to consider that as well, because volume, temperature, and pressure are all linked to describe gases. So holding pressure constant, if you increase the volume, well, that pressure goes down because the particles are just going to collide with the surfaces less frequently, right? If you've got some fixed amount of gas inside of a container and you increase the size of that container, well, the gas particles have to travel further now across the container before they hit another surface, before rebounding and traveling in another direction. In the next videos, we'll be dealing with gas laws, especially the ideal gas law. I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching.